So a little while ago, I recorded a video of this groove that I came up with, and I asked people to guess the time signature. When I went ahead and broke that groove down, I revealed that the time signature of the groove I wrote was in 7/8. However, in the comments, a bunch of people turned around and tried to make the argument that the way I played it somehow was 7/4, not 7/8. Now, I've already done video responses to a couple of these people, but this person actually did a video response for me, and I thought it was important to address it. So all that being said, let's let the 7/8, 7/4 debate begin. Hey Jordan, I just want to respond to your video. There's a lot to unpack here, so let's get into it.
Is this beat in 7/8 or 7/4? And Jay actually made a response video to a lot of the comments he was getting, and when he talked about why it was in 7/8 rather than 7/4.
First off, to be clear, in none of my responses, including the video response, did I ever say it's definitively in 7/8 and not in 7/4. In fact, if you look at this comment, you'll see that I actually said it could be interpreted in any value of 7, simply because there's a count there and no notation. In other words, you have the beat, but you don't have the rhythm. This makes it completely subjective as to what time signature we're in.
However, I would highly encourage that we actually teach that beat as being in 7/4 rather than 7/8. 7/8 is what we would call an odd meter, an odd meter being a meter made up of both simple and complex beats.
The definition of odd meter is just any meter that has an odd number on top. Technically, 3/4 is an odd meter because the 3 is odd. However, because triplets are so common in music, most people don't think of it like that.
So a simple beat is something you would see in 4/4, where there's 4 beats in the measure, and the subdivision would be the 8th note of 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now a complex beat would be something like 12/8, where there's still 4 beats, but the subdivision is going to be 1 triplet, 2 triplet, 3 triplet, 4 triplet. So there's that triplet feel inside of it, even though they both have 4 beats.
So by your definition, just to be clear, you're saying a simple beat is 1 and 2 and, where a complex beat is 1 triplet, 2 triplet. However, you could very easily play 4/4 in groups of 3, which you're determining as a complex beat. So if I went 1 E and a 2 E and a 3 E and a 4 E and a 1, 2, which is a 4/3 polyrhythm, still 4/4. Okay, now talking about 12/8 being cut up in 4 groups of 3. That is a way to feel 12/8, not the way to feel 12/8. So 12/8 could be anything. 12/8 could be any number of 12 eighth notes. That's all 12/8 means, that there's 12 beats in the measure and the eighth note gets 1 beat. As long as the measure adds up to 12 eighth notes, then it's 12/8. Doesn't matter what the feel is doing. The feel in and of itself doesn't dictate the time signature, and that's the crux of the issue here. You are trying to reverse engineer the time signature based on feel.
Definition of 7/8 is an odd meter with 2 simple and 1 complex beat.
The definition of 7/8 is there's 7 beats in the measure and the eighth note gets the beat. In other words, the measure has to add up to 7 eighth notes. That's the definition of 7/8. It has nothing to do with feel. We haven't gotten there yet. The challenge is we don't get to feel until way after the time signature is established. So the time signature is first, that's why it's the first thing in the measure. And that's going to define the relationship between the beat and the rhythm. The beat is how you're counting it, the rhythms are the notes that you're playing.
Meaning that we would count 7/8 as 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, or you could count it as 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3 1 2 1 2.
7/8 is a value in music. It's saying that the measure has to add up to 7 eighth notes. So if we said 7/8 equals $1, what you're saying is this arrangement of coins is equal to $1, and that's the only way you could get $1. Or maybe this, or maybe this. But we all know that $1 is just a value, and there's so many ways you could cut that up. You could do 100 pennies, still gives you $1. It's the same thing with time signatures.
In this drum lick where he's kind of playing 7 straight notes, and you don't feel that pulsation, that variation in the beat, that we call that 7/4 rather than 7/8.
They are literally just a value. You could cut the notes up any which way you want. How you cut the notes up and how you feel the count is completely subjective. The feel is going to be described as how you would accent it. So you by yourself were saying 7 is going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2, which predisposes an accent on 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 1, 3, 5. Now you're adding a feel to that 7. And now you're saying because it feels that way, that makes it 7/8. And that's not true. 7/8 is 7/8 because of math. The feeling you add to it is up to the composer and the musician. Now, all that being said, have musicians associated certain feelings with specific time signatures over time? Absolutely they have. That doesn't mean that it defines the time signature, it just defines the fact that those feelings are most commonly related in tempo and accent to that time signature. So you counting 1 and 2 and 3 and is certainly not wrong. It doesn't define 7/8, but it's a common way to feel 7/8. The challenge is you could feel 7/4 or 7/16 or 7/32 the exact same way. The only difference between 7/8, 7/4, and 7/16 is how they're going to look on paper. Now let's look at this in a musical example. Now here, Fenichel is playing what I would consider a 7/8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If you want to use your count, you could do 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now I can very easily interpret that as 7/4. The reason I choose to interpret that as 7/8 is because I'm feeling the beat here, bat, which feels like a quarter to me. Now in 4/4, you'd have your backbeat on 2 and 4, right? 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And what Vinny's doing is he's just taking away the last eighth note. So 1/8 note less than 4/4 is 7/8. Now that doesn't necessarily mean it has to be 7/8. I'm just interpreting it that way based on the feel. I could very easily write this in 7/4 or 7/16, and that would be my choice as somebody that was interpreting this piece of music. Now let's take a look at the actual groove that I played, and I'm going to go through all the time signatures by just doubling the tempo. If I was to feel it in 7/4, it would feel like this. 1E and a 2E and a 3E and a 4E and a 5E and a 6E and a 7E and a 1. If I was to keep that same feeling but do it in 7/8, it would sound like this. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and 1. That's the way I wrote it. So if I was to play this in, say, 7/16, it would sound like this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1. Now notice in that demonstration, I didn't change the sound. Changing the time signature didn't change the sound at all. The only thing I did to change the time signature was double the tempo and change the count. I even left the rhythm the same. And that just goes to show you I have full control over what I want to do with the time signature. Now my groove here doesn't conform to your view of 7/8, even though I wrote it that way. And I think that's a good thing. I think we should be teaching students to be open-minded and creative versus trying to fit them into this little shoebox of 1 and 2 and 3 and that's 7/8. But that's just my opinion. Now there's no doubt in my mind that some book or some teacher or some course taught you this way. And I'm not saying that your way is wrong. What I'm saying is that's a way, not the way. It's an interpretation of 7/8, not definitively 7/8 versus 7/4. Time signatures need to be flexible. You can do anything in any time signature. They can't be locked into a box. And that, to me, encourages creativity. So thanks, Jordan. I do appreciate the respectful debate, and I do hope I return the favor.